The sun dipped low in the sky over the rugged mountains of the Old West, casting long shadows across the dusty canyon. William Hawthorne dug his heels into the sides of his horse, urging it forward. He could feel the tension building in his chest. Just hours ago, he had received news that the stagecoach had crashed, and there was a chance the passengers might still be alive. As he rode deeper into the canyon, the comforting light of day began to fade, replaced by an eerie twilight. The air was thick with dust and uncertainty. Will had heard tales of bandits lurking around these parts, but he brushed aside those fears. His heart raced with a single thought: he had to find her. Clara. Clara was a spirited woman, full of laughter and free thoughts that danced like wildflowers in the wind. She had shared her dreams with him by the riverbank in the warm glow of late afternoons. With her fiery red hair and bold, shining eyes, she had pushed Will to be more than just a rancher. To him, she was more than just a friend. She was a notion of hope and life itself. The closer he got, the more anxious he became. He finally reached the site of the wreckage. The stagecoach lay crumpled like a tin can under the jagged rocks. Will's heart sank. Bodies weren't strewn about, but the devastation was clear. He stepped off his horse and approached the wreck. A mix of dirt, wood, and metal was scattered across the canyon floor. It looked like a nightmare. He called, his voice trembling. The canyon echoed back his plea, but no response came. He started to sift through the debris, his hands trembling, half scared of what he might find. The world around him went silent, as if even the wind held its breath. Minutes felt like hours as he strained to listen, hoping for a faint cry or a whisper of movement. He recalled the stories his father once told him about people finding each other in the darkest of times. He let hope flutter within him, even as fear gripped his heart. As he pushed through the wreckage, he uncovered belongings: a shattered guitar, a leather satchel, and a woolen jacket. Each item brought memories to the surface, recalling the shared stories on the journey to this moment. But still, there was no sign of Clara. Just when despair threatened to swallow him whole, he caught a glimpse of vibrant red beneath a crumpled seat. His heart raced. He shouted, rushing over. He lifted the debris with all his strength. When he finally uncovered her, his breath hitched. She lay there still and pale, her fiery red hair fanned out around her like flames. Panic clawed at Will's chest, but he dropped to his knees beside her. He could see the rise and fall of her chest, shallow but present. She was alive, Clara, he called again, this time gentle. He shook her lightly, holding her hand. Her eyelids fluttered and a soft groan escaped her lips. Relief washed over him, accompanied by a wave of desperation. She was hurt badly. He quickly assessed her injuries. There were cuts and bruises, and she had a nasty gash on her forehead. Her typically warm face appeared lifeless, but he could feel the fight inside her. "I'm here," he whispered, squeezing her hand, trying to encourage her back to life. "Stay with me, Clara." He glanced around, searching for help. The sun was sinking below the mountains, and night was upon them. His voice echoed through the canyon. His heart pounded in his ears, but the world remained silent. In that moment of utter isolation, he understood the weight of their situation. Why had he waited so long to express his feelings? They had danced around their emotions, unsure and afraid. Fear of losing her kicked him hard in the gut. He wouldn't let that happen, not now. He carefully cradled her head, feeling her warmth against him. "Clara, I need you to hear me. I've loved you for as long as I can remember. You've brightened my darkest days." Her brow furrowed slightly. He could see a flicker of awareness behind her closed eyes. It was faint, but he held onto it like a lifeline. "I won't let you go, not like this." With every breath he took, Will felt the weight of time pressing down on him. He decided he had to move her to get her to safety. He shifted himself to gather enough strength, then gently slid his arms around her. He felt her body shift, and his heart raced with worry. "Clara, I'm going to pick you up now." He lifted her carefully, cradling her close. She felt so fragile against him. He looked back at the wreckage, taking in the chaos before turning his attention back to the shadows ahead. He couldn't stay there, not with the looming night and the unknown dangers hiding in the dark. The path was treacherous, rocks underfoot and uncertainty in his mind. He spoke softly to her as he stumbled along, hoping the sound of his voice would keep her tethered to the world. "I remember our first ride together. You smiled so brightly like the morning sun. We can get through this." Every step felt monumental, each jolt triggering a wave of fear that threatened to pull him down into despair. But he couldn't think of that. He had to focus. Clara needed him. The shadows danced around him, growing darker and more menacing. He found a small clearing and laid her down gently on a patch of grass. Will knelt beside her, cradling her hand again, feeling her pulse like a fragile thread. "Stay with me, Clara, just breathe." As he sat there, he could hear the distant sounds of a creek nearby. With a sudden burst of determination, he decided he couldn't just wait. He had to do something. "I'll be back, I promise," he said, pressing her hand gently before standing up. He rushed towards the sound, feeling the coolness of the dusk air against his skin. He spotted a small stream, the water streaming down from the mountains, glittering in the fading light. He filled his hat with water, hoping it would help her. He rushed back, his heart hammering in his chest, feeling the urgency claw at him as he hurried toward Clara. When he returned, he carefully tilted her head as he offered her a small bit of water. It was only a sip, but it was all he could do. "Clara, can you hear me? Please come back to me." He noticed a faint flicker in her eyelids, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. It felt like an eternity, yet also the briefest moment. Will held her hand tighter, not wanting to let go. As the night deepened, the stars sparkled like tiny beacons in the sky. Will looked up, feeling a strange sense of peace mingled with fear. "You've always loved the stars," he murmured. Minutes melted into hours as he watched over her, holding her hand tightly in the chilly night air. She was his light, and he refused to let it go out. Memories rolled through his mind, laughter, dreams, shared moments. He remembered Clara telling him that life is about connections, about the people we care for. Hope coursed through him when he saw her fingers stir slightly. It was a small movement, but it filled him with gratitude. "Clara, please, if you can hear my voice, just keep fighting." The night dragged on, and he began to feel exhaustion creeping into his bones. He didn't allow it to show. He remained vigilant, afraid the moment he closed his eyes she would slip away. But he felt the warmth in her hand begin to fade. Panic surged through him. "No, no, no," he murmured, desperation creeping in. "Please, Clara, fight." He squeezed her hand with all his might, praying each word planted seeds of hope in her heart. As the darkness stretched on, dawn finally broke. The first light of morning painted the sky with soft hues of pink and orange. Will's eyes widened as he noticed Clara's eyelashes flutter again. Her eyes slowly opened, a glimmer of recognition in her gaze. She whispered, her voice barely audible yet sending a jolt of energy through him. "I'm right here," he breathed, relief flooding his being. "You're going to be okay." There was a moment of silence between them, a world of unspoken emotions swirling in the air. Clara's fingers squeezed back, and he could feel the warmth return to her grasp. "I thought I lost you," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "You're so important to me, Clara." Tears filled her eyes as she spoke softly. In that fragile moment, as dawn spread across the canyon, Will felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just relief, it was a promise. A vow to never let the fear of losing someone keep him from expressing how deeply he felt. The sun rose higher, bathing them in light, and together they faced the warmth of the new day. With her hand in his, the world felt a little less daunting. Together, they would find their way, just as they always had. Wind howled through the canyon, carrying with it a haunting sound of metal groaning and wood splintering. It was the aftermath of a catastrophic crash. The Stagecoach, once a proud vessel of hope and adventure, lay crumpled at the bottom of a ravine, like a broken bird with clipped wings. William Hawthorne stood at the edge, breath caught in his throat, heart pounding like a drum in the stillness. He had been riding at a breakneck pace, compelled by a fear that clawed at him ever since he'd heard the news. Not far from this ruin, he had left behind everything he knew, driven by a singular thought. Clara. His heart raced as he stepped closer, moving through the rocky debris, wondering if she was among the wreckage. The sky had turned to shades of gray, reflecting the turmoil in his mind. Memories flooded his thoughts, the day Clara boarded the stagecoach, her laughter ringing like bells in his ears, her eyes bright with dreams of the journey ahead. That undeniable spark they shared, like a fire begging to ignite, was now in danger of being extinguished forever. He shouted, voice echoing off the canyon walls, no answer, just the unsettling quiet that followed. He feared the worst. Fear sparked tears in his eyes as he pushed through the tangle of broken wood and leather, searching for a sign of her. Minutes felt like hours, each heartbeat a reminder of the urgency. He stumbled upon a leather bag, scattered papers, and a few personal belongings strewn about like lost dreams. A part of him wanted to believe that, like the stagecoach, Clara was still alive, but despair seeped into his veins. "Please, Clara," he whispered, pressing his hands into the dust like a desperate prayer. Then, amidst the wreckage, he noticed a soft crimson flash, her scarf caught beneath a twisted beam. Hope ignited in his chest like a match struck against flint. He yanked it free, clutching it tightly, reminding himself of her vibrant spirit, her fierce determination to explore the world. He called again, louder this time. He swept back a pile of debris, determination surging through him. "You can't be gone." Sweat dripped down his brow, the sun's intensity pushing against him, but there was no room for surrender. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm him, he heard it, a faint groan coming from behind the broken remnants of the coach. Will's heart raced. He bolted toward the sound, adrenaline pumping. Maybe, just maybe, she was alive. He shifted aside a heavy piece of wood, his breath hitching at the sight that greeted him. Clara lay there, bruised and battered, but her chest rose and fell with a shaky rhythm. Relief coursed through him like a river breaking free of winter's grasp. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands trembling as he brushed hair from her face, revealing a gash on her forehead. She mumbled, her voice soft like a feather. "Yes, it's me, you're going to be okay," he assured her, but the tremor in his voice betrayed a different story. Fear rippled through him, but her fluttering eyes were a lifeline. He needed to keep her with him. "Stay with me." "Can't," she gasped, pain flickering across her features. Each word was a struggle, and it cut through him like a knife. "Just hold on, I'll find a way," he promised, swallowing hard. He scanned the area, his mind racing. They were deep in the canyon, far from help. Dusk would soon settle in, cloaking the world in darkness. Will felt desperation clawing at him, but he willed himself to stay calm. Clara needed him to be strong. "It's going to be all right," he whispered, even as panic threatened to rise within him. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to think clearly. He needed to move her to get her somewhere safe. "Clara, I'm going to lift you up." Carefully, he slipped his arms beneath her body, feeling the warmth radiate from her skin, and lifted her gently. She winced but managed a weak nod. As he started to navigate the debris, his heart ached with every step. He could feel her weight against him, but it was her spirit fueling his every move. "You're tougher than this," he encouraged, carefully placing one foot in front of the other. Memories of their laughter and shared dreams echoed in his heart, pushing him to keep going despite the odds. The shadows loomed larger around them, the canyon engulfed in twilight. It felt as if the very earth was against them. Rocks slipped beneath his boots, and he fought to maintain his balance. "Just a little further," he murmured, trying to keep her focused. "Think of the river. Remember when we went fishing?" Her eyes flickered at the memory, her grip tightening around his wrist. "You," she managed to tease, breathless and weak. He chuckled despite the fear raging inside him. "Not with you reeling it in like a champ." With each passing moment dawned a new realization. He couldn't let this be how their story ended. The love they had woven together was intertwined in every step he took. He wouldn't allow that to crumble now. At last, he found a small clearing, a pocket of safety carved out from the chaos of the crash. He laid her down gently on the grass, breathing heavily as he sat beside her. The sky was dimming and the shadows closed in around them, but he pushed back against it, determined to keep hope alive. "Stay with me, Clara, just breathe," he urged, wiping the sweat from his brow and brushing dirt from her cheeks. "Help will come," she whispered, pain etched in her features like a haunting echo of their journey. "I know," he replied, voice steady but laced with concern, "but you're strong." He took her hand in his, feeling the warmth seep into him, reminding him of their adventures and the life they had dreamt about together. As the darkness deepened, he glanced around, searching for some sign of life or help. He needed a plan. Somewhere in the back of his mind, old tales of survival began to surface, of how people had made it through, clinging to hope in one another. He couldn't fail Clara. His thoughts turned to the distant creek, a rush of water promising both sustenance and strength. "I'll be right back," he said softly, planting a kiss on her forehead, a gentle promise and a spark of courage amidst the chaos. He moved towards the sound, heart hammering in his chest. The creek shimmered under the dim light, but he didn't have time for fear. He filled his hat and hurried back, careful not to stumble or spill a drop. When he returned, he cupped her chin gently, tilting her head slightly. He poured the cool water into her lips, watching as relief crossed her face. She whispered, eyes meeting his with fragile trust. "I know," he confessed, fear gnawing at him, but he forced himself to meet her gaze. "But we're going to make it, I promise." He couldn't bear the thought of losing her. With every passing breath, he clung to the belief that they would rise together from the ashes of this nightmare. He believed in their bond, in the love they had nurtured far from the shadows of this canyon. As darkness enveloped them, the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, twinkling like silent witnesses to their struggle. He stroked her hair, whispering stories of the future he envisioned for them. He said, "We'll build it together." A flicker of a smile crossed her lips. "Without a doubt," he assured her, voice strong even as uncertainty swirled in the air. "We'll plant our dreams in the soil, see them grow, and have a family of our own." She closed her eyes, squeezing his hand tightly. The warmth of her touch fueled his spirit, and he wrestled against the encroaching night. He felt the hours drain away, the weight of the world pressing on as the darkness thickened around them. She murmured, eyes fluttering open again. "No," he interrupted, panic crashing in like waves. "Don't you dare say that. You're going to be fine." "I need to hear you say it," she insisted, her voice trembling. "Promise me." With all the strength he could muster, he met her gaze, pouring every ounce of love and conviction into his words. "I promise, Clara, no matter what, we'll face this together." As dawn broke across the horizon, a beam of light pierced through the dark canyon walls. Hope flickered back into existence. For the first time since the crash, he believed they could overcome this. Minutes turned to hours, but he held firm, recounting their adventures, recounting the laughter and joy that had colored their world before this tragedy. He watched as Clara slowly regained strength, her grip on his hand tightening once more. "Will," she whispered, eyes shining brighter as the sun peeked over the mountains. "Never," he said, warmth flooding through him as he watched the light spill across her face. "You're my heart, Clara." As morning broke, they would rise, bound by love and ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together, perhaps they could conquer the darkest canyons and build a life that would shine brighter than any star. And as the sun continued to rise, it glowed with the promise of new beginnings, illuminating the path they would carve together in the world ahead. Wind whistled through the canyon, carrying the distant echo of a disaster barely contained. The Stagecoach, once a proud vessel of adventure, now lay scattered among jagged rocks and twisted remains, crushed by the weight of its own failure. The sun dipped low, casting shadows that twisted with despair. William Hawthorne appeared like a ghost through the haze, haunted by urgency and fear. He raced against time, heart pounding a frantic rhythm, racing to a scene he prayed he wouldn't find. Just hours earlier, news had reached him in the quiet of his ranch, a single whispered rumor: the stagecoach had crashed. Clara, she was on that coach. The world around him faded as he rode deeper into the canyon, dread pooling in his stomach with every beat of his horse's hooves. As he dismounted, each step toward the wreckage felt heavy, as if the very earth was pressing down with the weight of his fears. Wreckage lay scattered, a nightmarish puzzle of broken wood and scattered belongings. Among them a leather boot, a battered suitcase, remnants of lives interrupted. He had to give voice to his worst fear. His voice echoed off the canyon walls, swallowed by the void. He wished fervently for an answer, but only silence greeted him back. Panic surged, gnawing at the edges of his resolve. He pushed forward, hands trembling, kneeling in the dirt as he raked through the debris, desperate to find her. With every shard of broken wood he moved, memories flickered in his mind. Clara's laughter dancing in the air, her fiery red hair catching the sun like flame. Moments spent together, the riverbank, twilight evenings, whispered dreams of their future. Would this be how their story ended? He shut his eyes for a moment, shaking his head as if dislodging the thought. No, he couldn't believe that. Crouching lower, he noticed something bright amid the darkness. A flash of red her scarf caught beneath a crushed beam. Hope ignited in his heart, a fierce flicker amidst the chaos that threatened to engulf him. He yanked it free, cradling it against his chest, feeling her spirit in the fabric. He hollered again, his voice raw with desperation. Each shout seemed to ripple through the silence, pushing him forward. Suddenly, a soft groan broke through the stillness. His heart leaped as he turned toward the sound, eyes wide. He shouted, urgency propelling him, knees scraping the ground as he pushed aside more debris. And then he saw her lying amid the wreckage, a fragile figure that stirred just enough to draw breath. Relief washed over him like a dam breaking. She was there, alive, kneeling beside her. Will's heart ached. Her face was bruised, eyes fluttering open just a crack. She croaked, voice trembling and weak. Every syllable was a battle. Right here, Clara, he replied, his voice thick with emotion. He brushed hair from her forehead, spotting the gash that marred her skin. Panic clawed at him as he assessed her injuries, feeling the weight of the world pressing down upon him. I can't move, she murmured. Each word was like a dagger. Will felt panic creeping in again, threatening to overshadow the hope that lingered. He needed to act, needed to move her away from this nightmare. I'm going to lift you, he assured her, forcing calm into his voice. He slipped his arms under her body, feeling her warmth. She winced, and his heart shattered just a little more. But there was no choice, he had to get her out. With painstaking care, he maneuvered through the wreckage, each shift and grunt echoing the struggle they both faced. The earth felt alive beneath him, the mountains watching silently. We'll make it, Clara, you're tougher than this, he whispered, hoping she could hear the determination in his voice. As he stepped into a small clearing, the shadows crawled closer, thick as a blanket. Will laid her down on the grass, cradling her head gently, his heart racing. He opened his mouth to speak, but found words had failed him. Instead, he watched her chest rise and fall, a soft, fragile rhythm that anchored him. Is it? Clara asked, barely a whisper, her eyes fluttering closed again. Of course it is, he said, trying to reassure both her and himself. You just need to rest. The quiet that followed felt heavy, almost suffocating. Will glanced around the clearing, anxiety rising. He needed help and fast. Desperation hit him hard as darkness threatened to swallow them whole. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to think. Even in the panic that clouded his mind, he remembered tales from old, stories of resilience that spanned generations. He could draw strength from those stories. Just hold on, he murmured, gripping her hand tightly, warmth seeping from him to her. Help will come. But with each passing hour, hope faltered. The sun dipped lower in the sky, colors fading from bright yellows and blues to grays and blacks. His heart pounded like thunder as he leaned over her, wondering how he could muster the strength to face another moment. Memories spilled into his mind again, their dreams, her laughter, the way the world felt right in her presence. You can't do this to me, he whispered, tears threatening to spill. You need to fight, Clara, I can't lose you. As twilight wrapped them in its embrace, a sound broke through the night. The distant thunder of hooves pounding against the earth echoed faintly, a glimmer of hope shining through the despair. He shot to his feet, heart racing, straining to pinpoint the source of the sound. He shouted, voice breaking through the silence like an arrow, piercing the darkness. With each call, he felt the earth beneath him shift, his body electric with energy. The sound grew louder, a cavalry of possibility galloping toward them. Then through the dim light, he saw silhouettes, riders on horseback, darting through the trees like shadows. Relief overflowed, mingling with renewed urgency. As the figures approached, they halted, eyes drawn to the wreckage and the vulnerable figure lying among the grass. One rider dismounted, rushing toward them with purpose. A woman's voice rang out, her features stern but not unkind. The stagecoach, Will panted, choking back emotions. Clara was on it. The woman knelt beside Clara, fierce determination etched into her face. All right, her hands, steady and skilled, started checking Clara's injuries, her voice a soothing balm amidst the chaos. Will watched as hope flickered back to life in the gentle way the woman moved. Stay with us, Clara, the woman urged, gently tilting her head. Help is here. Will held Clara's hand tighter, feeling her pulse, aware of the fight that remained within her. See, you're not alone, he said softly. I'm right here, we're going to be okay. As the other riders set to work, lifting Clara with care, energy surged through Will. With every movement, he felt a sense of urgency, a desire to protect her and shield her from the darkness that had engulfed them. The night air was thick with uncertainty, but he clung to the belief that they would make it through together. They loaded Clara onto a stretched canvas, gently bringing her away from the wreckage. Will walked beside her, resolute, ready to shield her from any lingering shadow. As they rode through rough paths, the close-knit group moved with silent determination, focusing on the task at hand. "Stay awake, Clara," the woman said, glancing back at Will as they maneuvered forward. But Will felt Clara's grip loosening and dread clawed at his insides. "Clara, just a little further. You're the strongest woman I know." He forced a smile through the tightness in his chest. She muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. A weak smile crept onto her face, a flicker of light against the bleakness. "I could never be jealous of you," he said, urging her to hold on to the humor that sparkled in her eyes. "You're fierce." As they pressed forward, every rock and bump jostled them, but the promise of safety hung in the air, palpable and electric. Will felt the warmth of hope in his chest, igniting the bond they shared. The canyon walls began to recede, giving way to open fields and the promise of civilization. Clara's spirit flickered, and he felt the fear grip him once more. "You're coming back to me," he said, eyes fierce. "You have to." She nodded, though it took every ounce of strength. The memories they had built together flickered like fireflies in his mind, nights spent under the stars, dreams shared by the riverbank, laughter ringing through the wind. With each passing moment, Clara seemed to draw strength from their shared love, her eyes glinting with a softness as they reached the outskirts of a small town. "Will," she murmured, "don't forget me." "Never," he vowed, his voice resolute. As they entered town, lanterns began to flicker to life, illuminating the dark. They pulled up to a small clinic, and the riders rushed forward with urgency. Will climbed off his horse, his heart racing, desperate to keep her safe. They lifted her gently, moving her inside. Clara whispered, her eyes dimming. "I'm right here," he whispered back, squeezing her hand as they carried her to a room filled with light and a soft warmth that contrasted the world outside. The doctor moved quickly, and Will watched, heart racing. He hovered in the doorway, grounding himself with every beat of Clara's heart. He could feel the weight of their love, a promise forged in the fire of a near disaster. They would make it through this together. As the night wore on, Will waited, lost in thought. Memories flooded his mind as the world outside settled into silence. He clung to hope like a lifeline, whispering small promises into the stillness, that they would build their dreams, that every tomorrow would be a little brighter. When the door finally opened, the doctor emerged with a weary smile. "She's stable," he affirmed, wiping his brow. Will's heart soared with relief, stronger and more resilient than it had felt just hours before. He stepped forward, determination etched into his features. "I'll be right here for her," he vowed. And in that moment, as dawn broke outside, illuminating the world in golden light, Will understood something profound. Love, like the light of a new day, could illuminate even the darkest canyons, forging paths through brokenness. Together, they would write their story anew, one filled with hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief that love could conquer anything life threw their way. The stagecoach shuddered violently as it careened toward the edge of a steep canyon, the driver desperately pulling on the reins, but it was too late. One final jolt sent the coach tumbling, crashing into the depths below, a cacophony of splintering wood and cries echoing in the still air. It was a disaster that would change lives forever. William Hawthorne stood at the edge of that canyon, breathless and stunned. Dust hung thick in the aftermath like a ghostly shroud. The stagecoach was nothing more than a twisted heap of iron and broken dreams. His heart pounded in his chest as denial filtered through him. Clara, the woman who brought light into his life, was on that coach. He shouted, a raw desperation tearing through his throat. The name hung in the air, a prayer set loose into the vast, indifferent wilderness. With no reply, silence reigned, heavily suffocating him. He rushed toward the wreckage, adrenaline flooding his senses. As a rancher, he understood hard work and resilience, but nothing prepared him for this. Memories flashed Clara's laughter, her vibrant spirit dancing in the sunlight, her dreams blending with his. Each good memory stung like a fresh wound. As he neared the broken coach, his breaths came in ragged gasps. Please let her be okay," he whispered, pushing aside chunks of wood as if by sheer force of will he could reverse the chaos. Hope flickered dimly in his chest, but fear clamped down like a vice. He called again, his voice echoing into the void, swallowed by despair. With shaking hands, he scoured the debris for any sign of her. His heart thundered, the weight of time pressing on him as he hurried through the wreckage. His fingers brushed against something cool and metallic, a pocket watch, its glass cracked. He held it under the fading light, realizing it belonged to one of the other passengers. Panic surged. What if he was too late? What if she was lost? Then, amidst the wreckage, a glimmer of red fabric caught his eye. No, he gasped, suddenly scrambling forward, shifting aside chunks of debris. The scarf was hers, unmistakable and beautiful, adorned with intricate patterns only Clara would choose. Hope reignited, fierce and bright, overwhelming his doubt. He screamed, urgency escalating within him. With each sweep of his hands, he called out as if to mend their reality with his voice. "I'm here, Clara." His heart felt like a drum in his ears, the sound of her silence unbearable and loud. And then he heard it, a faint moan, a whisper carried on the wind. It reverberated through him, a primal force driving him forward. That was enough. She was alive. He cried once more, rushing toward the sound, fear and hope colliding within him. There, in the shadows of the disarray, her figure lay half buried. He dropped to his knees beside her. Cold dread gripped his heart, but his hands trembled with purpose as he swept away the debris that covered her. His voice cracked, eyes wide with disbelief. She was there, bloodied but alive. Relief surged through him like a warm wave, but he could see the pain on her face, her breath shallow and uneven. She barely registered him, recognition clouded by pain. "I'm here, love." "I'm here," he murmured, cradling her head cautiously in his lap, panic surfacing as he took in the bruises on her skin, the gash on her forehead. The world around them faded into insignificance. All he could focus on was her, the woman he cared for so deeply. "Don't move, Clara, just breathe," he commanded, feeling the surge of terror rise again. But as the words left his mouth, the reality of their isolation seeped in. They were deep in this canyon, and night was swiftly approaching. Fear clawed at him like a wild animal. Can't breathe," Clara gasped, struggle etched in her features. "I won't let you go," he whispered fiercely, trying to summon the strength he didn't know he had. He surveyed the wreckage surrounding them, planning the impossible. He needed to get her out of here. He needed to find a way. He asked, desperation spilling into his voice. She made a weak attempt to shake her head, the hint of movement almost breaking him. "I don't think so," she rasped. Her eyes fluttered wearily. He pressed his lips together, tension mounting. "All right." Without a second thought, he scooped her up, feeling her slight weight in his arms. Every movement sent a beat of worry through him. He just needed to keep her alive, keep her close. As he navigated the jagged remains of the stagecoach, his mind raced with thoughts of help, of friends who might be in town, of anything that could guide him through this nightmare. "I'll get you to safety, I promise," he said, though the uncertainty gnawed at him with every shaky step. The path was treacherous, riddled with loose rocks and debris, but willpower surged through him like fire. Clara leaned against him, her breaths becoming shallower, the warmth in her touch slowly fading. Each step felt monumental, the shadows of the canyon closing in around them. He ventured, needing to keep her awake. "Down by the river you caught that huge trout." A flicker of a smile crossed her lips, fragile but precious. "You kept saying you were jealous," she murmured. "Jealous," he laughed, though it felt strained, the sound more like a desperate lifeline than a joke. As darkness wrapped its arms around them like a clammy blanket, Clara's weight shifted and he had to refocus. "Stay with me, Clara. We're gonna make it out of this." "I wish I could see the stars," she said, eyes fluttering again. There was a softness in her voice, a whisper of longing that ignited a flame of determination inside him. "Just hold on a bit longer," he urged, his voice steady though his heart raced. "The stars will be waiting for us. We're going to look at them together." Each grueling step felt like a relentless battle, but for Clara he would keep going. He felt the cool night air biting at his skin, but the fire inside him burned bright. He finally found a clearing, a small patch of grass amidst the chaos, and he laid her down gently, feeling the weight of the world tugging at his heart. "Stay here," he instructed, his voice a mix of tenderness and urgency. "I'm going to find help." He pressed his hand to her forehead, feeling the warmth of her skin, a reminder that this was not the end. Clara's voice trailed as his heart broke at her frail plea. "Never," he promised, injecting every ounce of sincerity into the word. He sprinted into the darkness, his heart pounding like a wild stallion. The shadows loomed larger as he moved deeper into the canyon, the twinkling stars above a distant reminder of hope. He pushed through the underbrush, feeling the branches scratch against him like they were alive, fighting against the very notion of urgency. He needed help, he desperately needed help. Every faceless stranger in town could be the key, could pull Clara back from the precipice. He shouted into the void. Despair hung heavy around him, but he refused to falter. He became a blur of motion, racing toward the distant glow of lanterns as they flickered against the dark like beacons. His breath was ragged, lungs burning, but all he could see was Clara, fragile and vulnerable. He could not fail her. At last, he reached a small cabin, the soft light spilling out onto the porch. He pounded on the door, hands shaking from exertion and fear. He shouted, the urgency sharp in his voice. A woman opened the door, startled but quick to comprehend the desperation in his eyes. A stagecoach crashed in the canyon. Without hesitation, she grabbed a lantern and motioned for him to lead the way. "Show me." They rushed back through the darkness, his heart pounding a fierce rhythm, hope blooming in his chest. When they reached Clara, she lay there, teetering on the edge of consciousness. Gratitude washed over Will as the woman knelt beside her, collecting herself quickly, assessing Clara's injuries with deft hands. "Stay with me, Clara," the woman coaxed, her voice serene and steady. Will watched, breathless, as the woman worked, finding solace in her calmness. "Everything will be all right," he said, squeezing Clara's hand. She blinked up at him, eyes filled with vulnerability, hope wavering. "I know," he whispered, feeling the weight of her fear, "but you're not alone anymore." The woman gave a few urgent commands, her movements swift and purposeful. Minutes seemed like hours, every heartbeat stretched thin under the weight of uncertainty. Will remained by Clara's side, watching her closely, capturing every flutter of her lashes, each breath as precious as a flickering candle. As time slipped away, Clara's breaths began to deepen, and Will felt the thin thread of hope strengthening again. "You're so strong, Clara," he whispered. And then, like the dawn breaking, she smiled faintly, a fragile, beautiful thing that made his heart soar anew. "We'll catch that trout someday," she replied softly, eyes glimmering with determination. "Yes, we will," he promised, his voice unyielding. They would catch that trout and share countless sunsets, watch stars twinkle overhead, and build the dreams they had often whispered about, together. In that moment, amidst the chaos of the crash and the darkness of the night, a quiet pact was made. They would rise from the ashes, stronger than before. Love would conquer all, and together they would walk hand in hand into whatever the future would hold. As dawn began to break, the first rays of light pierced the horizon, illuminating the canyon. Glimmers of hope sparkled around them, enfolding them in warmth. Will knew they were bound by something unbreakable. The journey ahead would be their greatest adventure yet, and this was just the beginning. The Stagecoach was more than just a vehicle. It was a promise of connection, a lifeline to the outside world. But that day it surged forward, wheels spinning wildly as a deep rumble echoed against the canyon walls. With a sudden jolt, it careened off the rocky path, plummeting down the steep incline. In that harrowing moment, the hope of a journey turned into sheer terror. William Hawthorne stood at the edge of the canyon, heart racing, breath caught in his throat. Dust swirled in the air like the remnants of lost dreams, and somewhere deep inside, a fear clawed at his gut. The Stagecoach, a twisted mass of wood and iron, lay shattered at the bottom, swallowed by the jagged rocks. Voice rose above the whispering wind, desperation spilling from his lips. There was no answer, just silence echoing back to him, taunting him with the possibility that she might be gone. Clara had been on that coach, full of life and laughter, her dreams intertwined with his. The thought of losing her sent a chill down his spine. Will dashed toward the wreckage, adrenaline pulsing through his veins. With each step, old memories flooded back, days spent by the river, her laughter dancing on the breeze like music. He couldn't let those moments be all that remained. He raced to the scene, his heart heavy with dread. The wreckage was chaotic, metal twisted and broken, the remnants of the coach strewn across the rocky ground. As Will searched, the weight of despair pressed down on him. He called again, his voice thick with emotion. He began to sift through the debris, panic rising within him like a tide. Each piece he pushed aside felt like a weight in his chest, every second more agonizing than the last. Time, it seemed, had taken on a life of its own. Then suddenly he caught a glimpse of vibrant red among the ruins, her scarf caught under a broken wheel. Will's pulse quickened, hope flickered in the shadows. He shouted frantic as he yanked it free, clutching it to his heart like a lifeline. Pushing deeper into the wreckage, he felt a sense of urgency mixed with fear. Suddenly, from the depths of despair, a faint sound reached his ears, a soft moan. His heart raced. He rushed toward the sound, following it until he finally saw her lying among the rubble. There she was, pale and still, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Relief washed over him like a wave, but it was quickly replaced by panic as he knelt beside her. She groaned softly, eyes fluttering open just a crack. Her voice was barely a whisper, each word dragging through her pain. "I'm here, you're going to be okay," he promised, though uncertainty gnawed at him. He pulled her hair back gently, noticing the gash on her forehead. His heart sank at the sight, but he couldn't let fear take hold. He looked around, desperate to find something, anything that could help. The sun hung low in the sky, shadows creeping closer, time slipping away from them. He could feel the pressure building, but he forced himself to focus. "I'm going to lift you," he said, positioning himself carefully. As he cradled her in his arms, he felt her warmth against him, every inch of her fragile being igniting his determination. He wasn't going to lose her. "We'll find a way out of here," he said, trying to comfort them both. Navigating through the debris, he moved slowly, each step weighing him down with the fear of what lay ahead. He asked, trying to distract her from the pain, "You caught the biggest trout I'd ever seen." A flicker of recognition crossed her face, reminding him of her spirit, the fire that had drawn him to her from the very beginning. "You said you were jealous," she whispered, a weak smile trying to break through her pain. "Jealous, never." "You were the champion of that river," he laughed, though the sound was filled with desperation. "We'll catch another one." The path felt treacherous underfoot, rocks slipping and sliding. He couldn't falter, couldn't dwell on the fear clawing at him. With every jolt, he felt the weight of her life in his arms, and he knew he wouldn't fail her. "We're almost there," he urged, the words a mantra. Suddenly, the canyon opened up, revealing a small clearing bathed in the fading light. Will laid Clara down carefully on a patch of grass, panic mingling with relief. "Stay here," he instructed, pressing his hand to her forehead. She gasped, snapping her eyes open. "I have to find someone who can help," he insisted, though every part of him wished he could stay beside her, protecting her from the shadows closing in around them. "I'll be back." He sprinted into the encroaching darkness, driven by urgency. He called out, desperation lacing each word, "Help." The echoes of his pleas bounced off the canyon walls, met only with silence. Fear gripped him tightly, but he pushed it aside. He had to focus. The trees pressed in around him, branches snapping in the wind like fingers clawing at the night. Will pressed on, driven by the thought of Clara, the woman who had breathed life and laughter into his world. He could hear the distant rush of water and let it guide him, praying for a miracle. After a few moments that felt like an eternity, he finally spotted flickering lights in the distance. Hope surged through him as he sprinted toward them, each step pumping adrenaline through his veins. His heart raced, fueled by purpose, as he neared a small cabin. He pounded on the door, breathless and wild. "Please," a woman opened the door, her expression shifting from surprise to concern. "My friend Clara, she was in a stagecoach that crashed in the canyon." The words spilled out, each syllable laced with urgency. Without hesitation, the woman grabbed a lantern and they raced back toward the wreckage, his heart hammering in his chest as he desperately sought to keep Clara safe. As they approached, he saw Clara still lying in the clearing, her fragile form a stark reminder of how precious life could be. He rushed to her side, feeling the weight of fear lift a little as the woman knelt by Clara. "Stay with me, Clara, help is here," the woman said gently, glancing up at Will, her voice steady. Will felt a rush of hope as he squeezed Clara's hand, wanting to anchor her to the moment. Clara's eyes fluttered, a fragile whisper, "I thought." "I'll never leave you," he promised fiercely. "You're my everything." As the woman began to assess Clara's injuries, Will felt the familiar grip of fear tight. He wanted to help, wanted to take control, but in this moment all he could do was hope. Hope that Clara would pull through, that their love would triumph against all odds. "Just keep breathing, Clara," he urged, willing strength into her. "We'll laugh about this one day at the river." The woman worked quickly, cleaning Clara's wounds, her hands steady and reassuring. Will felt every second stretch into eternity, each heartbeat a reminder of the urgency that hung over them like a cloud. But then a flicker of recognition crossed Clara's face as she turned to him. She whispered, her eyes brightening just a shade. It was a fragile thing, that moment, but it held power like nothing else. "You are," he said, his voice steady. "You light up my life, Clara." As they waited, time seemed to lose its meaning, stretched thin under the weight of anxiety. The doctor emerged from the cabin, a grim yet hopeful look on his face. Tears of relief spilled down Will's cheeks. "Thank you," he managed, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. He turned back to Clara, hovering at her side. "You did it, Clara," she smiled weakly, her spirit flickering like a flame, alive and real. "Will I never," he promised, gripping her hand as tightly as he could. "You're my heart, Clara." As the sun began to rise over the canyon, casting its warm light on them, Will felt hope bloom anew. They had faced darkness together and emerged stronger. Hand in hand, they would navigate whatever lay ahead. Love would guide them through the shadows, building paths through brokenness, and together they would forge a future worth living. This was just the beginning of their journey, one filled with laughter, dreams, and the stars they would always reach for, side by side as partners forever entwined. The crack of thunder rolled through the canyon, ominous and loud, as the stagecoach jostled violently along the rocky path. Inside, passengers clutched the wooden benches, faces pale with fear. But none could have prepared for the heart-stopping moment when the horses, spooked by an unseen danger, reared back. With horror, the driver watched as the stagecoach tipped dangerously, sliding toward the edge of the canyon. In an instant, it was gone. William Hawthorne stood at the canyon's edge, chest tightening as he witnessed the dark shape vanish into the depths below. His heart dropped like a stone. Clara, his thoughts spiraled. She was on that coach, full of dreams and a spirit that lit up every room. Each second stretched painfully as the echoes of the crash reverberated in the stillness around him. He shouted into the vast emptiness, his voice trembling. It was a cry that hung in the air, swallowed by the canyon walls. Anxiety clawed at him like a wild beast. He dashed toward the wreckage, hands shaking, fear propelling him forward. The world around him transformed into chaos, wood splinters and steel fragments scattered across the rocky terrain. He pushed through the wreckage, feeling time slip by like grains of sand. Every piece he moved felt like a weight, each moment heavy with dread. Where was she? Desperate memories flooded his mind, her laughter, her fierce determination to explore the world, the way her eyes sparkled with life. He called again, but his voice sounded foreign, lost among the ruins. He ripped aside pieces of the broken coach, fighting against a tide of despair that threatened to pull him under. Each second felt like an eternity. Then a flash of crimson fabric caught his eye. It was Clara's scarf, entangled beneath a twisted beam. Will felt a spark of hope ignite within him, pulling him closer. He yanked it free, clutching it tightly to his chest. "Hold on, Clara," he whispered, trying to summon her spirit through the fabric. He began to sift through the wreckage more fervently, his heart pounding louder than the chaos around him. He needed to find her. She had to be alive. "Please, please let her be okay," he murmured, as if the words had the power to shift fate itself. And then, as if the universe responded, he heard it, a faint groan that sent a jolt of electricity through him. He rushed in the direction of the sound, pushing through the debris until he finally saw her, lying among the wreckage, a fragile figure nearly hidden from view. His heart raced at the sight. Relief and fear wrestled within him as he knelt beside her. He cried, pulling aside remnants of the coach. She lay there pale. A small gasp escaped her lips as she fought to open her eyes. I'm here, he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. He gently cradled her face, his thumb brushing against her cheek. But the reality was stark. Her forehead was marred by a deep gash, blood seeping through her hair. Panic surged within him as he scanned her body for more injuries, heart racing. "Stay with me, okay, please," he urged, desperate to keep her with him. "Hurts, can't breathe," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper, like a flickering candle struggling against the wind. "Just focus on my voice," he said, willing strength into her. But as he surveyed the wreckage, the reality of their isolation settled heavily on him. Daylight was waning, the sun dipping below the canyon walls. Shadows stretched longer and darker around them. "I can carry you," he decided quickly. Gently, he slipped his arms beneath her, lifting her carefully. As he pulled her close, he felt her warmth, her fragile form pressing against him. He couldn't lose her. With each step he took toward the clearing, feeling the uneven ground shift beneath them, he fought against the panic growing inside. "You're tougher than this, Clara, I know you are," he whispered, pushing through the emotional storm, each step anchoring him to hope. "Remember that time we went fishing?" "You caught the biggest fish I'd ever seen," he said, trying to coax a smile from her lips. Her lips quirked up slightly, a ghost of a smile that flickered in the dim light. "You didn't take a picture," she mumbled. "Didn't have a camera, but I carry the memory with me everywhere," he replied, forcing a laugh despite the tightness in his chest. The clearing was just ahead, illuminated by the last remnants of sunlight streaming through the canyon. Will laid her gently on the grass, the urgency of the moment pressing down like a heavy blanket. "Stay here," he instructed, cupping her face in his hands, searching her eyes. "Will, stay," she pleaded, her voice trembling with panic. "I'll be right back, I promise," he insisted, though every part of him wanted to stay by her side, shield her from the world. He squeezed her hand before releasing it, willing her to hold on. The shadows deepened as he dashed back toward the wreckage, calling out desperately, "Is anyone out there?" He felt the weight of despair pressing on his shoulders, but he pushed forward with determination. Clara needed him. Suddenly, through the darkness, he spotted a faint glimmer, the reflection of lantern light flickering in the distance. Hope surged in his chest, fueled by necessity. He ran toward it, heart pounding against his ribs, the sound of his feet echoing in the stillness. "Help!" As he approached a small cabin illuminated by warm light, he pounded on the door, fear flooding his senses. A woman opened it, her eyes widening in surprise before concern washed across her face. "There's been a crash, a stagecoach." His words spilled out in a rush, urgency gripping him. "Show me," she commanded quickly, grabbing a lantern from inside. Will led her back through the canyon, his heart racing. The clearing came into view and he saw Clara, her figure fragile but still holding on against the darkness. Panic flared within him, but he pushed it aside. "She's right here," he said, rushing to her side. The woman knelt beside Clara, assessing her injuries with steady hands. She said soothingly, looking into Clara's eyes. Will held Clara's hand tightly, feeling warmth radiate from her to him. "You're going to be okay," he said softly, willing his voice to remain calm despite the chaos around them. "Will, I don't want to be alone," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. "Never," he promised fiercely, squeezing her hand. "I'm right here." As the woman expertly tended to Clara's wounds, Will watched, feeling an ache in his heart. He wanted to do more to take away her pain. But for now, all he could do was be present, grounding her in the moment. "We're going to get you to safety," the woman assured Clara, her tone steady and reassuring. Will felt the weight of time pressing against him as he leaned in closer. "Remember when we had that picnic by the river?" A flicker of a smile graced Clara's lips, her eyes fluttering as if holding on to the memory. "I'll still teach you, if I make it," she murmured. "You will," he insisted, determination flooding his voice. "Got so much left to do." As the woman worked, minutes stretched into what felt like a lifetime. The canyon walls loomed like silent watchers, and Will felt the weight of uncertainty in the air. But he refused to believe they would be overcome by despair. He had to hold on to hope for both their sakes. "Stay awake for me, Clara," Will urged, brushing hair away from her face. Each breath she took felt critical, each heartbeat a plea for life. "Just think about the stars when we get out of here." With every passing moment, Clara's strength seemed to wane, and the tension in Will's chest tightened. "Clara, please stay with me," he pleaded again. Suddenly her eyes opened wide, as if pulling back from a dream. "Will, I thought I lost you," she whispered, tears pooling at the edges of her eyes. "Never, Clara, I'm right here," he said fiercely. "You're my heart." And with those words tethered between them, time shifted again. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm glow, and Will felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. "I can see the stars, Will," Clara murmured softly, her voice filled with a delicate warmth. "Then you're right here with me," he assured, gripping her hand tighter. The woman finished up, a look of resolution crossing her face. "She's going to need rest and care." Will helped lift Clara, his heart racing again with the urgency. Together they moved with purpose, each step a promise, each breath an act of defiance against despair. As they finally approached the cabin, Will took a deep breath, glancing down at Clara. She looked fragile but alive, and he felt a rush of gratitude wash over him. Inside the cabin, they laid her on a simple cot, the space filled with warm light that seemed to push back the shadows. "Just relax," the woman instructed, beginning to prepare supplies for Clara's care. Will hovered nearby, anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. "I'll never leave your side," he vowed softly, knowing she needed to hear it. "Will, I was so scared," Clara said, eyes shining with vulnerability. "I know," he whispered, kneeling by her side, "but you're safe now." They exchanged a look filled with unspoken promises, a shared understanding that couldn't be put into words. Together they would face the aftermath of what had hawthorne. As Clara began to drift off, Will felt the first hint of relief wash over him. The shadows may have loomed large for a moment, but they were still here together. With night settling in around them, Will remained vigilant, holding her hand as she slept. He could feel the warmth of her spirit intertwined with his, and he knew that they would rise from this moment stronger and more resilient than before. He would be there for every sunrise and sunset, every fishing trip, every moment they had yet to explore. The stars danced above the canyon, but inside that cabin, a new light flickered, a bond forged in fire, a love that could weather any storm. This was just the beginning of their journey. Together, they would navigate the shadows and find their way back to the light, one heartbeat at a time. The heavy rumble of thunder echoed ominously across the canyon, a warning that went unheeded. The Stagecoach, a proud vessel of dreams and adventure, rattled violently along the rocky path, bouncing over potholes and careening toward disaster. Inside, passengers clutched their seats, silent screams of terror caught in their throats. Will Hawthorne was among them, his heart pounding, eyes locked onto the driver, sweat pooling on the man's brow as he fought for control. But the grip of fate was firm. The horses reared back suddenly, spooked by a crack of lightning. In the blink of an eye, the stagecoach tilted precariously, its wheels lifting off the treacherous path. Time stretched, and a horrible realization dawned: they were going over the edge. With a deafening crash, the stagecoach plunged into the abyss. Will's world became a kaleidoscope of chaos and shouting. He felt the force of gravity grab hold, twisting everything into darkness. Twisted wood broke apart like kindling, the weight of the world crashing down around him. For a heartbeat, nothing existed but the sensation of falling pure, unfiltered terror. Then darkness enveloped him. When Will regained consciousness, he lay on cold, hard ground, blinking against the bright sunlight that filtered through the trees above. He pushed himself up, confusion clouding his mind. The wreckage was everywhere. Broken wood and iron were scattered, a graveyard of dreams and hopes. He called, voice hoarse with panic. Where was she? He stumbled to his feet, adrenaline kicking in as he absorbed the scene: mangled metal, shattered glass, and the haunting echoes of cries still ringing in his ears. The very fabric of his world felt torn asunder. Clara, the woman who had brightened his life with her laughter, was somewhere in that wreckage, and he had to find her. He shouted again, a desperate plea carried away by the wind. He began to sift through the remains, heart pounding. Each piece he moved heavy with dread. Hope and fear intertwined in a chaotic dance as he clawed through the debris, searching for any sign of her. His fingers brushed against something cool and metallic, a pocket watch broken and useless. It belonged to another passenger, and a chill crept into his core. No, he couldn't think that way. Clara was strong, determined. She had to be okay. As he threw aside more pieces of the stagecoach, fragments of memories flooded his mind. Clara's infectious laughter echoed through his thoughts. Their days together by the river came rushing back, moments filled with joy and a sense of adventure. She couldn't be gone, he wouldn't let that happen. And then, just as despair began to creep in, he caught a glimpse of vibrant red fabric wedged beneath a jagged beam-her scarf. Hope ignited within him like a flame, fierce and bright. He shouted once more, rushing toward it, scraping the dirt off with trembling hands. He called again, the name tearing through his throat. With every ounce of strength, he yanked the beam free and felt a whirlwind of emotions crash over him as he uncovered her. There she lay, bruised but alive, her chest rising and falling unevenly, relief mixed with a tidal wave of fear. He gasped, dropping to his knees. He brushed her hair back gently, feeling rough patches where blood had dried. Her eyes fluttered open, but a cloud of confusion lingered in their depths. "I'm here," he replied, his heart racing. But as he assessed her injuries, dread washed over him. She was hurt, there was no question. The gash on her forehead was deep, but it wasn't just the physical wounds that tore at him. It was watching her fight against the pain and the vulnerability that swept over her. Can't. She gasped, each word a battle fought within her. "Just hold on, Clara, I need you to hold on," he urged, pushing panic back down. He scanned the wreckage, desperation thick in the air. She gasped again, fear glimmered in her eyes and his chest tightened at the sight. He had to act fast. "Clara, I'll lift you," he decided, urgency coursing through him. He carefully scooped her into his arms, her body light yet fragile, and he could feel the warmth draining from her. Just a little further. He began to move through the wreckage, each step deliberate, as if the very essence of his hope depended on every careful inch. The shadows felt threatening, creeping closer as the sun began to dip behind the canyon walls. "Stay with me," he urged, looking down at her face, trying to discern any flicker of strength within those bruised features. She could barely manage a whisper between ragged breaths. "I know," he replied, heart breaking into fragments, "but you're tougher than this. Remember when you caught that big trout?" A flicker of recognition crossed her face. He could see the memories fighting against the pain. "You were jealous," she mumbled, trying to force a smile. "Jealous," he laughed, though it felt like he was weaving a fragile thread of courage. "You're the star of that river." As he stepped carefully over the jagged debris, he felt the warmth of Clara's body against him, her presence anchoring him in the storm of anxiety swirling around them. He maneuvered, pressed on, determined to reach the clearing that lay ahead. There it was, the light of the fading sun illuminating the small clearing he desperately hoped for. He laid Clara down gently on the grass, careful of every movement. "Stay here," he said, burying his fear as he looked into her eyes. She protested weakly, fear rising in her voice. "I'll be right back, I promise," he insisted, though every fiber of his being screamed for him to stay at her side. He squeezed her hand, held on tight, then turned and sprinted into the darkness, heart racing. Help! The world around him was shrouded in shadows, a treacherous path that felt endless. But with each desperate call, he propelled himself forward, determined not to give up on her. Clara needed him. A sudden flash of hope ignited within him as he burst through the brush toward the distant lights he had seen earlier. The flickering glow beckoned him like a beacon in the night, and he shattered the tranquil silence as he rushed toward it. "Please." He reached a small log cabin nestled at the edge of the woods. The door swung open and a woman, startled but quickly assessing his urgency, stepped outside. She asked, her voice steady, yet the concern was evident. The stagecoach crashed in the canyon. He cried, nearly out of breath. "Show me," she replied without hesitation, grabbing a lantern and motioning for him to lead the way. Together they rushed toward the clearing, and as they approached, Will felt a flicker of anxious hope. Clara lay there, vulnerable and bruised, but the light of the lantern illuminated their path. "Stay with us, Clara," the woman urged as she knelt beside her, a calm determination visible in her face. Will stood by Clara, clutching her hand tightly, feeling her warmth slip away just as the daylight faded. "You're going to be okay," he whispered, seeking to transfer every ounce of strength he felt into her. As the woman began assessing Clara's injuries, Will felt the weight of the world closing in on him. "Stay strong, Clara," he probed gently, encouraging her to remember their shared stories. But Clara's eyelids fluttered, weariness creeping in. She murmured, her voice feeble and fragile. "Just a little longer," he urged, feeling the tension coil tightly in his chest. "Get through this for me." "I don't want to lose you," she admitted, vulnerability lacing her voice like an open wound. "I won't let you," he replied adamantly, squeezing her hand tighter as if to tether them together in the storm. "I'm right here." Minutes seemed to stretch into hours as the woman worked quickly, fixing wounds and tending to Clara with steady hands. Will became a silent observer, locked in the intensity of the moment, desperate to keep Clara's spirit alive. Suddenly, a dull thud echoed through the canyon, snapping him back to reality. The chaos of the crash felt so far away, temporarily lost in this moment where survival hung in the balance. He couldn't allow himself to let fear take hold. He whispered, trying to draw Clara back into their shared memories. "Wishes." Clara chuckled softly, a weak attempt to brighten the atmosphere, but it broke through the surface, a tender moment shared between them like flickering candles. "Especially that trout," he replied, laughter mingled with unwavering hope. The light of day slipped away, but in that fragile flicker of strength and memory, they pulled through the fear together. As dawn approached, Will felt a sense of warmth wash over him. Clara's hand gripped his tighter, her breathing steadying. "You're my star, Clara," he whispered, remaining steadfast. Finally, the woman finished. "She's stable," she announced, a wave of relief crashing over Will like a morning tide. Tears sprang to his eyes as he took in the moment. Relief mingled with gratitude, and he looked down at Clara, who fought to meet his gaze. "You did it," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. Clara smiled weakly, her spirit flickering like a stubborn flame, still bright against the odds. "Will, anything," he vowed, leaning closer so she could feel his presence. "Promise you won't forget me," she said, tears glimmering in her eyes, shiny and wet, reflecting the moonlight. "I could never," he swore, feeling the bond between them pulse with every heartbeat. "You are my heart, Clara." As the first light of dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Will understood that they were bound by love, by shared dreams and promises. The shadows of the canyon would never prey on them again. Hand in hand, they would face whatever came next. There would be laughter, stars above the river, and countless moments waiting to be shared. Together, they would explore the beauty of life, united by a bond forged in the fire of adversity and the brightness of hope. The stagecoach may have crashed, but love had prevailed, igniting a future filled with promise, one heartbeat at a time. And under the new sun, they prepared to rise, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead in their journey together. The sun hung high over the canyon, scorching the cracked earth beneath the stagecoach. The driver, a rugged man with a weathered face, strained against the reins as the horses galloped wildly down the narrow mountain path. He shouted, his voice strained, but the horses were spooked, eyes wide and frantic. The stagecoach rattled perilously, teetering on the edge of chaos. In the cabin, Will Hawthorne clutched the seat tightly, his heart racing. Beside him sat Clara, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. She looked beautiful, excited, her laughter ringing out like a sweet bell. Just moments ago, she had told him about all the adventures waiting for them in the small town ahead. But now, as fear gripped his chest, he was reminded of the danger that lay in the path before them. He shouted just as the driver lost control. The jolting motion sent them crashing toward the edge. Time slowed, stretching into a terrible clarity. Will's heart screamed as he braced himself, helplessly watching the ground disappear beneath them. The stagecoach plummeted, metal and wooden beams crumpling beneath the weight of terror. The world spun into chaos. Will awoke in the midst of shattered wood and twisted metal, the air thick with dust. Groaning, he pushed himself up from the debris, his body aching. Around him, the remnants of the coach lay strewn across the canyon floor, a wreckage of dreams and lives interrupted. He could barely take it in. Where was Clara? He shouted, but the only response was the echo of his own voice reverberating against the canyon walls. Panic surged through him like an electric shock. He stumbled to his feet, heart racing. He began to search through the wreckage, his hands trembling as he sifted through the broken pieces of the stagecoach. "Please, God, let her be okay," he pleaded, his voice cracking raw with emotion. Memories of Clara flooded his mind, the way her laughter danced in the wind, the warmth of her smile. They had planned this trip together, mapping out each adventure they would face. But now dread settled heavily in his chest as he pushed aside chunks of debris, desperate to find a sign of her. And then he saw it, a flash of red beneath a twisted beam. Hope ignited within him, fierce and bright. He lunged forward, yanking the beam aside with all his strength, his heart pounding in his ears. But underneath the wreckage lay more than just Clara's scarf. There she was, fragile and motionless. Fear gripped Will's throat as he dropped to her side, cradling her head in his lap. Clara, her eyes flickered open, confusion wedging between them. She gasped, her voice a brittle whisper. I'm here," he exclaimed, relief flooding him, but the sight of her bloodied forehead shattered that relief into pieces. "Hurts," she murmured, pain etched across her features as she struggled to breathe. Will's mind raced. He had to act. He had to get her out of here. The canyon was vast and night was closing in. Panic clawed at him, but he pushed it aside, forcing focus. With trembling hands, he carefully scooped her up, feeling the warmth of her body against him even as he sensed her slipping away. "Clara, just stay with me," he urged, fear squeezing his heart as he navigated through the chaotic remnants. Every step felt heavy as despair clawed at him, shadows creeping closer under the weight of the impending night. The air felt electric with uncertainty. He said, trying to coax an ounce of strength from her. A flicker of recognition appeared in her eyes, but the light was dimming. "You said you were jealous," she managed to respond, her voice barely above a whisper. Jealous? Never. His own heart raced against the sound of her breath, forcing laughter into a moment that felt desperate. The clearing approached, but every step was a treacherous journey through doubt and despair. They broke free from the wreckage and into a small clearing. Will laid her down gently on the soft grass, his heart pounding. "Stay here," he commanded, forcing himself to keep eye contact with her. "Don't leave me," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I won't," he promised, though he felt the tightness in his throat. He needed to find someone, anyone. Just hold on. Will shot off into the gathering darkness, calling for help. "Is anyone out there?" His voice echoed through the canyon, swallowed by the night. He pushed through the trees, the underbrush snapping beneath his feet. The fear of losing her gave him strength. Ahead, he spotted distant lights flickering. Hope surged within him like a flame. He raced toward them, heart pounding, pushing himself faster as desperation urged him on. Help. He reached a small cabin and without a moment's hesitation, he pounded on the door with fists that quaked from anxiety. When a woman opened it, surprise flickered across her face before concern took its place. "My friend Clara, she was in the stagecoach that crashed in the canyon." "Show me," the woman said urgently, grabbing a lantern and motioning for him to lead the way. With every ounce of energy left within him, Will sprinted back toward the clearing, fear curling in his stomach. When he reached Clara, he saw her lying there, vulnerable and fading. He knelt beside her, hope rekindling in his heart. She whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. The woman rushed to Clara's side, examining her injuries with precise movements. "Stay with us, Clara," she urged, her voice steady in the chaos. Will held Clara's hand tightly, feeling every tremor of her body. "You'll be all right," he said, helpless but hopeful. "Just think of the trout we'll catch next summer." As the woman worked quickly, cleaning wounds and offering care, time felt frozen. Shadows stretched around them, the air thick with tension and anxiety. Will's heart raced, desperate to keep Clara engaged. "Remember the picnic we had under the trees?" A faint smile crossed Clara's face, the memories momentarily lighting her weary eyes. "You ate them all," she whispered, her voice cracked but warm. "Because I was trying to impress you," Will replied, laughter tinging his voice, every second a flicker of strength between them. The woman continued to work, her hands steady, focused. Will stayed near, unwilling to leave Clara's side, captivated by the bond they shared. "Just breathe," he told her, feeling the pull of hope. "We're not done yet." Hours passed, the world around them fading as Will held Clara's hand, anchoring her to the moment. He felt the weight of time pressing on him, each heartbeat a whisper of their shared dreams. "You're the strongest woman I know," he whispered, urging her with love. "You'll pull through." But just as a flicker of relief washed over him, Clara's eyes fluttered closed, her grip relaxing. Panic surged through him, overwhelming his senses. Suddenly, a low rumble rolled through the canyon, shaking the ground beneath them. It was an ominous sound, resonating against the rocks like a warning. Will's heart raced as he glanced around, feeling the world close in. The woman shouted, crouching over Clara. Will grabbed Clara's hand, tension tightening in his chest, and in that moment the ground beneath them shifted. Dust filled the air as the rumble grew louder, almost deafening. Will shouted, adrenaline pushing him into action. The canyon walls began to crumble, stones tumbling down like a rainstorm of rock. The woman urged, but the path they had come from was blocked. Will's mind raced, caught in a panic as his instincts kicked in. He couldn't let Clara down now, not when they were so close. He shouted, heart racing as he gripped Clara's hand tightly. They had to find higher ground, a way to escape the chaos unfolding around them. Just as they began to move, the ground shook again, stronger this time. A massive rock slide cascaded down the canyon walls, barreling toward them with terrifying speed. Will yelled, picking Clara up as he sprinted through the dust-filled air, adrenaline propelling him forward. Keep moving. Will felt the weight of desperation pushing against him, each step a fight against time, against fate. But clarity surged through him. He had to protect Clara. He had to get them both to safety, or they wouldn't make it out of this nightmare. As rocks tumbled and the canyon roared, Will glanced behind him just in time to see the first fragments of debris crashing down, a terrifying wave heading straight for them. His heart raced. They veered left, racing against nature itself, the world collapsing around them. It was like a scene pulled from a nightmare, yet through it all, Clara's presence burned bright in his mind. He wouldn't let the darkness consume them. But every footfall felt like an eternity, and the air grew heavier, stifling their breath. Clara gasped, her voice barely a whisper, hatred seeping into the fear. I won't lose you, he shouted back, pushing forward, determined to reach safety. As they approached a small ridge at the edge of the canyon, the ground beneath him gave a sharp tremor, sending a shock of fear coursing through him. The rock slide was nearly upon them. It was now or never. With one last burst of desperation, he leaped over the edge, landing just as the ground behind them broke apart, sending a cascade of rocks tumbling to the canyon floor below. Together they fell, tumbling to the side, while cradling Clara as they hit the ground outside the danger zone. Breathless, he lay beside her, chest heaving. He gasped, scanning her injuries, desperately hoping the worst was over. But the world felt heavier, shadows still looming around them. Clara's eyes were wide with fear, and her breaths came quickly, growing shallow once more. She whispered, the name barely escaping her lips, and in that moment, as the remnants of the world around them began to settle, Will felt an unsettling tremor run through him. Time froze. They had survived the slide, but what lay ahead, he couldn't know. The canyon still loomed, and the chaos of the night echoed in his mind. Clara, please stay with me, he urged, fighting against the impending darkness that sought to drown them both. As the dust settled, a single thought pierced through Will's mind. Their journey was far from over, and the real battle was only just beginning.